Listen, I want to tell you something today that's going to fundamentally transform how you understand the dynamics between men and women. When a woman takes you for granted, it's not because you lack value, it's because you've been giving your attention away without proper reciprocity, and that's a catastrophic error in judgment. And here's what's even more critical. The moment you pull back, something extraordinary happens in her psychology that most men never understand. And that's precisely what we're going to dissect today. What you're about to learn isn't just relationship advice. This is a deep dive into female psychology rooted in evolutionary biology, behavioral science, and the principle of self-mastery. By the end of this discussion, you'll understand exactly why absence creates attraction, why silence speaks louder than words, and most importantly, how to reclaim your masculine frame when you've been undervalued. This isn't about manipulation. It's about self-respect. And self-respect, gentlemen, is the cornerstone of every meaningful relationship you'll ever have. We'll examine the psychological mechanisms that trigger a woman's regret when she realizes she's lost a high-value man. You'll learn when to pull back, when to walk away, and most critically, why your value increases the moment you stop seeking validation. This knowledge could save you from years of emotional suffering. Now, let's start with the fundamental mechanism at play here. When you consistently show up, text first, initiate plans, and make yourself constantly available, you create what neuroscientists call predictable reward patterns. And here's the problem with predictability. It doesn't trigger the neurochemical response in the brain that creates desire. It's the anticipation of reward, not the reward itself, that creates that chemical cascade we call attraction. Think about it this way. Research in behavioral psychology demonstrates that intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards, create stronger attachment than consistent reinforcement. When you're always available, you remove the element of uncertainty that keeps her brain engaged. You become like the lamp in the corner of the room. It's always there, it serves a function, but nobody thinks about it. Nobody values it until suddenly it's gone and the room is dark. There's this fascinating psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect. It shows that human beings remember incomplete tasks better than completed ones. When you withdraw your presence, you create an open loop in her mind. She's compelled to think about you because the relationship narrative feels unfinished. Her brain literally cannot let go of something that hasn't been resolved. That's not manipulation on your part. That's just how human psychology works. And you know what? This aligns perfectly with what the ancient Stoics understood. Epictetus taught that what disturbs people's minds is not events themselves, but their judgments about those events. When you're constantly present, she forms the judgment that you're dependable but replaceable. Your absence forces her to reevaluate that judgment entirely. Suddenly, you're not the predictable background character anymore. You're the question mark she can't stop thinking about. Let me explain the scarcity principle because this is crucial. The fundamental economic principle of supply and demand applies to human attention just as much as it applies to commodities. When your attention becomes scarce, its perceived value skyrockets. This isn't manipulation, this is reality. Research on influence demonstrates that people assign higher value to what's rare or difficult to obtain. Your constant availability makes you common. Your absence makes you rare. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, women are biologically wired to seek men who display high mate value through selective availability. Think about what constant availability signals. A man who's always free, who drops everything the moment she calls, who has infinite time to respond to messages. That man is signaling that he has no other options, no purpose, no mission, no community demanding his attention. And that's biologically unattractive because it suggests low social value. The ancient Stoics understood this implicitly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action, that what stands in the way becomes the way. Your withdrawal isn't passive. It's a powerful action that reveals her true investment level. You're not punishing her. You're simply stepping back to see if there's genuine reciprocity or if you've been carrying the entire relationship on your shoulders. Now, most men operate from a place of fear. Fear of losing her, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. This fear manifests as pursuit behavior. Excessive texting, constant check-ins, over-explanation of your every move and thought. And this pursuit behavior absolutely destroys attraction. Let me be clear about why. When you stop initiating contact, you break the established pattern. Pattern interruption is one of the most powerful psychological tools because it forces the brain to pay attention to something it had previously automated. She was on autopilot with you. Your attention was guaranteed, so she stopped valuing it. When that pattern breaks, her brain suddenly wakes up and says, wait, what changed? Why isn't this working the way it used to? This connects to what the Stoics called prohairesis, the power of choice. You're choosing to value yourself over her validation. That choice communicates strength. And strength is fundamentally attractive because it signals that you can handle adversity, that you won't crumble under pressure, that you're someone who can be relied upon when things get difficult. Here's what happens neurologically. When she expects your text and it doesn't come, her brain experiences a prediction error. This error triggers curiosity and increased attention toward you. It's precisely the opposite of what happens when you're predictable. Predictability allows her to forget about you. Unpredictability forces her to remember. So what happens after you pull back? Let me walk you through the stages she goes through, because understanding this will help you maintain your resolve when every instinct is telling you to break silence and reach out. The first stage is confusion and testing. She's accustomed to your pattern of behavior, and when that pattern breaks, her brain seeks to understand why. She'll likely test you by posting on social media, being visible in your circles, or sending subtle signals to see if you'll react. This testing behavior is her attempt to restore the familiar dynamic where she holds the power. From a psychological standpoint, this is called extinction burst, when a previously reinforced behavior suddenly stops producing results. There's an initial increase in that behavior before it eventually decreases. She'll temporarily pursue you more to restore the status quo. She might post that photo where she looks particularly good. She might show up at places she knows you'll be. She might like something you posted from weeks ago just to appear on your notifications. The response here is crucial, and it requires discipline. You must remain unmoved. Seneca taught that a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Her tests are your trials. Pass them by, maintaining your frame. Don't react. Don't take the bait. Continue focusing on yourself. The second stage is what I call the memory reconstruction phase. Once the confusion settles, she enters a phase where she begins remembering the relationship differently. This is where the little things you did, the things she dismissed at the time, suddenly become significant. Psychological research on memory shows that we reconstruct memories based on our current emotional state. When she feels your absence, she reconstructs memories of your presence with positive emotional coloring. The brain has a negativity bias during relationships. It focuses on flaws, on what's not quite right, on what could be better, but it shifts to a positivity bias after loss. Suddenly, she remembers your good morning texts, your patience when she was difficult, your reliability when everyone else let her down. This connects to the concept of impermanence. She didn't value the present moment with you because she assumed it would always be there. Human beings are terrible at appreciating what's constant. We only recognize value through contrast. Your absence teaches her the lesson of impermanence in the most powerful way possible. The third stage is the comparison trap, and this one is inevitable. She begins comparing other men to you. Every interaction with new men is filtered through the template you established. Social comparison theory demonstrates that humans constantly evaluate their choices by comparing them to alternatives. If the new man doesn't listen as well, doesn't make her feel as safe, doesn't match your emotional intelligence, she notices, and she can't stop noticing. The psychological phenomenon of choice supportive bias typically makes people rationalize their decisions. We like to believe we made the right choice, so we emphasize the positives and downplay the negatives. But when she sees you thriving without her, this bias gets challenged. She starts questioning whether she made the right choice. And that doubt is corrosive to her peace of mind. From the Stoic perspective, this is where your self-improvement becomes critical. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Don't seek revenge. Don't try to make her jealous. Simply become better. Let your growth speak louder than any words could. When she sees you improving physically, advancing professionally, developing emotionally, it creates a cognitive dissonance in her mind that's almost unbearable. The fourth stage is the ego-emotion battle. An internal conflict emerges between her ego, her pride that won't let her admit she was wrong, and her emotions, the genuine feelings of missing you. This battle is exhausting for her. Cognitive dissonance theory explains that holding two contradictory beliefs creates psychological discomfort. She wants to maintain her self-image as someone who made the right decision, but her emotions tell her she made a mistake. These two things can't coexist comfortably. Something has to give. The longer you remain silent and strong, the more her emotions wear down her ego. Emotion is more primal than pride. It's deeper, it's older in evolutionary terms, and it will eventually win if you maintain your position. But this takes time. And this is where the principle of patience becomes your weapon. Epictetus taught that no great thing is created suddenly. Her transformation from pride to regret takes time. Don't rush the process by breaking silence prematurely. The fifth stage is the subtle reach out. She'll test the waters with casual messages. Hey, how are you? Or she'll like an old photo from months ago. These are reconnaissance missions to see if you're still emotionally available. These reach-outs are low-investment, high-information gathering attempts. She wants to know if she still has access to you without risking her ego by being direct. Your response determines everything. If you respond eagerly, like you've been waiting by your phone for weeks, you've proven that you were waiting. You've proven that she still controls your emotional state. If you respond neutrally and briefly, you maintain the dynamic that's causing her regret. You're friendly but not needy, present but not pursuing. This is what the Stoics meant by preferred indifferent. You prefer positive interactions, but you're indifferent to the outcome. This emotional detachment is both psychologically healthy and deeply attractive. The sixth stage is witnessing your growth. When she sees you improving physically, professionally, emotionally, while she's stagnant or struggling, the regret intensifies dramatically. Social media amplifies this effect enormously. When your posts show you traveling, achieving goals, surrounded by quality people, it creates what psychologists call fear of missing out, combined with genuine loss aversion. Women are highly attuned to status and trajectory. If you were a good man who's now becoming a great man, and she's no longer part of that journey, she experiences profound regret. Not just regret about losing you as you were, but regret about losing access to the man you're becoming. This is the ultimate vindication, but not in the way you might think. You didn't pursue revenge, you pursued excellence. And excellence is its own reward, regardless of whether she notices. The fact that she notices is simply a byproduct of you doing what you should have been doing all along, which is investing in yourself. The seventh stage is the point of no return. Eventually, she reaches a critical juncture. Does she swallow her pride and genuinely reach out, or does she accept the loss and move on with lingering regret? Research on relationship dissolution shows that there's a psychological point of no return where both parties have invested too much in separation to reconcile. Your job isn't to prevent this. Your job is to be at peace with either outcome. By this stage, your silence and growth have communicated everything. She knows exactly what she lost. Whether she acts on this knowledge is irrelevant to your value. You've already won by becoming someone you respect, someone you're proud to be. Seneca's wisdom applies here perfectly. He said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. She'll imagine conversations with you. Imagine apologizing. Imagine what could have been. This imaginative suffering is far worse than any words you could say to her. Your silence creates space for her imagination to run wild, and that's more powerful than any argument or plea. Now let me talk about frame control, because this is absolutely crucial. Frame control is psychological leadership. It's whose reality dominates the interaction. When you chase, apologize excessively, or over-explain yourself, you operate in her frame. You're accepting her judgment of reality as more valid than yours. When you maintain composure and self-respect, you operate in your own frame. In every interaction, there's an implicit negotiation about whose frame is stronger. The person with the stronger frame doesn't force it. They simply refuse to abandon it. When she ignores you and you remain centered, unmoved, focused on your purpose, you've maintained frame. And that's attractive because it signals psychological stability. Marcus Aurelius taught that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Her behavior is an outside event. Your response is within your control. That's the only thing that matters. Women are naturally attracted to men with strong frames because it signals psychological stability. A man who can't maintain his frame under pressure can't be relied upon when life gets difficult. And life will get difficult. That's guaranteed. Let's talk about attention, because your attention is your most valuable resource. When you give it freely and constantly, it becomes worthless. When you give it selectively and strategically, it becomes precious. Economic principles apply to human relationships. Abundance decreases value. Scarcity increases it. Make your attention abundant and it's worthless. Make it scarce and she'll compete for it. But this isn't about playing games. It's about having genuine priorities. If you're building a business, developing skills, pursuing health, and cultivating meaningful relationships, you naturally have less attention to give to someone who doesn't reciprocate. That's not a strategy. That's a natural consequence of living a purposeful life. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Decide who you want to be. A man of purpose and self-respect. Then allocate your attention accordingly. When you do this authentically, when your scarcity of attention comes from genuine priority rather than strategic manipulation, it's extraordinarily powerful. Now comes the hardest part, recognizing when a woman's behavior reflects not a test of your strength, but genuine disrespect that warrants permanent departure. Pattern recognition is key here. One instance of taking you for granted might be a test. Repeated patterns despite communication are character reveals. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. The Stoics teach us to accept what we cannot control and change what we can. You cannot control her behavior. You can control whether you tolerate it. Walking away isn't giving up. It's exercising your agency. It's saying, I value myself too much to accept this treatment. There's profound dignity in walking away from disrespect. It communicates self-worth more powerfully than any argument or plea. As Marcus Aurelius noted, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Don't become bitter. Don't become resentful. Become better elsewhere. The ultimate response to being undervalued isn't revenge. It's self-actualization. Build your life into something so compelling that her absence becomes irrelevant. Psychologically, the best way to move past any loss is to create gain elsewhere. Channel the energy you were spending on an unreciprocal relationship into your purpose, your fitness, your finances, and your friendships. Women are attracted to men on upward trajectories. If she sees you building, growing, and thriving after she left, it triggers massive regret. But here's the key, and I cannot emphasize this enough. You're not doing it for her to see. You're doing it for yourself. If she notices, that's incidental. Your primary motivation is becoming the kind of man you respect. This embodies the ultimate principle. Focus on what's within your control. You can't control whether she regrets losing you. You can control whether you become the kind of man that anyone would regret losing. That's the distinction that changes everything. Let me talk about outcome independence, because this is the final and most powerful principle. You must reach a point where you genuinely don't need her to come back. Paradoxically, this is often when she does. But even more importantly, it's when you no longer care whether she does or not. Outcome independence means you've done the internal work to be complete without her. You're not faking indifference. You've genuinely released attachment to whether she returns. This energetic shift is palpable. Women can feel it. From a psychological perspective, neediness repels because it signals low mate value. Outcome independence attracts because it signals abundance and self-sufficiency. The Stoics called this voluntary discomfort, choosing to be comfortable with uncertainty and potential loss. When you're genuinely at peace with her absence, you've won regardless of whether she comes back. Because you've become someone who doesn't need any particular person to be complete. That's freedom. That's strength. That's the goal. So let me distill this for you. When a woman takes you for granted, your power lies not in words, but in withdrawal. Not in pursuit, but in purpose. Not in explanation, but in elevation. The moment you stop chasing, stop seeking validation, and start building yourself into an undeniable force, that's when everything shifts. But here's the deeper truth. This isn't just about getting her to miss you. It's about becoming the kind of man who never needs to worry about being taken for granted in the first place. A man who values himself so deeply that he naturally filters out people who don't reciprocate. A man whose life is so full of purpose and meaning that any relationship is an addition, not a completion. If this resonated with you, if you felt that recognition that you've been giving your power away, then you need to subscribe to Charismand. This channel is dedicated to helping men understand themselves, understand women, and most importantly, build lives of purpose and dignity. We don't teach manipulation. We teach self-mastery. And self-mastery, gentlemen, is the foundation of everything worthwhile. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment sharing your experience. Have you walked away from someone who took you for granted? What happened? Your story might help another man find his strength. Remember this above all. The goal isn't to make her regret losing you. The goal is to become someone you're proud to be, with or without her. That's the real victory. That's what matters. That's what lasts.